The sun didn't rise over Gloomwood Academy. It simply leaked through the perpetual gray fog in a way that made the gargoyles on the roof look like they were stretching. Frostras stood at the iron gates, her breath coming out in small, crystalline puffs. Being a frost sprite in a school full of fire-breathers, shapeshifters, and various undead-ish teens was intimidating. She adjusted her backpack, felt the satisfying jingle of her ice-enchanted pens, and stepped onto the grounds. Period 1. Advanced Alchemy and Social Freezing. Frostra's first stop was Alchemy 101. The room smelled like sulfur and old gym socks. She took a seat next to a girl who appeared to be made entirely of shimmering purple swamp gas. "I'm Vesper," the girl bubbled. "A ghost elemental." "You're chilly, Frostra," she replied, offering a hand. When Vesper took it, a tiny frost flower bloomed on Vesper's vaporous wrist. "Whoa," Vesper whispered. "Built-in jewelry." "I like you." The teacher, a centaur named Professor Thorn, trotted to the front. "Today, we aren't just mixing potions. We're mixing destinies. Pair up and create a draft of liquid courage." Frostra and Vesper worked together. While other students were accidentally melting their cauldrons, Frostra used her natural gift to flash cool their mixture at the precise moment Vesper added Essence of Lionheart. The result wasn't a murky sludge like the others, but a glowing sapphire sorbet. "First day and we're already acing it," Vesper laughed, her purple mist swirling happily. Lunch, the cheerleading tryouts. After a morning of dragon history and telepathy, Frostra saw a flyer nailed to a weeping willow. "Cheer squad tryouts. All species welcome. Must have pulse, or at least a sturdy frame." Frostra had always been told sprites were too fragile for sports, but her heart, which beat at a cool 40 BPM, was set on it. She headed to the courtyard where a werewolf named Fang was currently being tossed 30 feet into the air by a group of ogres. "Next," barked the captain, a gorgon named Medusa Jane, MJ for short. Frostra stepped up. The other monsters whispered. "She's going to melt under the sun," a vampire sneered. "I don't melt," Frostra muttered. She closed her eyes. Instead of a standard cheer, she began a rhythmic dance. As she moved, she didn't just shout, she manipulated the moisture in the air. With every "Go Gloomwood," she created shimmering ice platforms in mid-air, leaping from one to the other until she was standing 20 feet up, surrounded by a swirling snowstorm that spelled out the school's initials. The courtyard went silent. MJ pushed her sunglasses up. "We've never had a flyer who could build her own stairs." "You're in, Frosty." Period 5. Ethereal music. The afternoon brought experimental music. The classroom was filled with strange instruments, harps made of spider silk, drums made of giant mushroom caps, and a piano that screamed when you hit the wrong note. The teacher, a banshee with very chic earplugs, asked everyone to find their soul sound. Frostra sat at the back with a boy named Silas, a shadow stitcher who was remarkably shy. "I can't play anything," Silas whispered. "My shadows just muffle the sound." "Then let's collaborate," Frostra suggested. She began to hum, a high, piercing note like wind whistling through a glacier. As she sang, she tapped on a set of crystal chimes. The sound was beautiful, but lonely. Then, Silas reached out. He wrapped his shadows around the sound waves, dampening the sharp edges and giving the music a deep, rhythmic thrum, like a heartbeat in a blizzard. The class stopped to listen. It wasn't just music, it was an atmosphere. For the first time, Frostra felt like she wasn't just a cold girl in a warm world. She was a piece of a much larger, weirder puzzle. The final bell. As the bells tolled, they were actually enchanted ravens that croaked in unison. Frostra walked toward the gates. Her wings were a bit tired, and she had a smudge of enchanted soot on her nose. But she wasn't the same girl who had arrived that morning. Vesper floated over, and Silas waved from the shadows of the library. "Hey, Frostra!" Vesper called out. "We're going to the underground for swamp shakes." "You coming?" Frostra looked at her new friends, a cloud of gas and a boy made of shadows, and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Only if mine is extra cold," she joked. As she walked away, she pulled out her radio to check in. It was a long walk back to the Sprite District, but she had a feeling this year was going to be legendary. Ahead, a cavernous space usually reserved for monster dodgeball and ghoul lifting. Today, however, it was filled with an unfamiliar energy. Other monster girls, all in their cheer uniforms, were already stretching. their varying shades of green, purple, and gray a vibrant contrast to the gym's usual gloom. As they stepped inside, the squeak of sneakers on the polished floor echoed around them. The cheer captain, a fiery-haired vampire named Crimson, clapped her hands. "All right, monsters. Gather round. Welcome to your first official Gloomwood cheer practice." Frostra felt a bead of nervous ice form on her forehead. She tried to blend into the background, but her bright white hair and pale blue skin made her stand out like a snowflake in a coal mine. Crimson began demonstrating a basic cheer, her movements sharp and precise. Frostra tried to mimic her, but her limbs felt stiff and uncoordinated. When she attempted a jump, she nearly slipped on a patch of ice that mysteriously appeared beneath her feet. A few snickers rippled through the group. Frostra's cheeks flushed a faint blue. This was harder than it looked. But then, she saw Vesper give her a reassuring nod. Taking a deep breath, Frostra focused. She thought about the precision of icicles, the graceful swoop of a winter wind. With each count she moved, her initial awkwardness slowly melting away. By the end of practice, she wasn't perfect, but she was smiling, a rare sight for the usually stoic ice monster. She even managed a small, controlled flurry of snowflakes to accompany her final pose. Crimson, initially skeptical, gave a small, approving nod. "Not bad, Frostra. You've got potential, frosty potential." Frostra walked out of the gym, a new sense of warmth spreading through her chest despite her icy nature. Her uniform was a little rumpled, and she still had a lot to learn, but she felt a thrill she hadn't experienced before. She was a Gloomwood cheerleader, and she was ready to bring her own unique, chilling flair to the squad. After practice let out, Frostra and Vesper headed straight for the Gloomy Grind, the underground cafe where the lighting was dim and the drinks were ice cold. Frostra felt the phantom ache of the jumps and kicks in her legs, but the blue flush of excitement hadn't quite left her cheeks. Vesper drifted through the brick walls of the cafe entrance, already eyeing the menu. "You deserve a Mega Frost frappe after that save on the ice patch," Vesper giggled, her translucent form shimmering under the flickering light bulbs. They sat at a small wooden table in the corner. Frostra gripped her frozen drink, the condensation instantly turning into a thin layer of frost under her touch. They talked about Crimson's intense drills, and the way the shadow monster boys in the back of the gym had looked impressed when Frostra finally nailed her pose. For a moment, Frostra didn't feel like the weird ice girl. She just felt like a student hanging out with her best friend. As the moon rose higher, casting long, twisted shadows over the cobblestone paths of Gloomwood, the two began the walk home. The air was crisp, and the silence of the night was only broken by the occasional hoot of a three-eyed owl. Vesper floated lazily beside Frostra, her feet never touching the ground. "Same time tomorrow?" Vesper asked as they reached the iron gates of Frostra's family estate. "Same time," Frostra replied, a genuine tiny smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. She watched Vesper vanish into the mist before turning to head inside, her cheer pom-poms tucked safely in her bag, ready for day 2.